Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
The snow merrily creaked underfoot, and that familiar sound from her childhood filled her heart with joy. Camille was an optimist by nature, so she looked for the positive in everything around her. On this winter morning, she did not pay attention to the frost, but tried to get to the destination as soon as possible, color not in the chassis, and happy she flew into the salon, followed by a cold cloud penetrated into the warm room. There was no one at the reception, as the staff of the place jokingly called the reception area. But from the hall heard indignant cries of people. It's not the month of May. You can and hurry at the entrance. In the morning, they reported that it is expected to -18. And to me, that's it. 35. Who'd want to do their hair in a freezer like this? Really, let me see. What's the appointment? Camille went to the room where the girls were preparing their tools. Don't bother. It's just me, the oldest of the masters. Emily was sorry to say that Camille had forgotten about you. I'm sorry, but we just can't get used to having a new owner. I'm not surprised. I'm still getting used to the position myself. It's been almost a year. It's like I've been stuck in the past. Emily liked to talk about otherworldly powers and spooky stuff. She immediately took the bait. Oh, guys, I don't know about you, but I often have such a feeling that I know ahead of time what is going to happen in a minute. For example, recently I'm walking down the street, and in front of the car is going. And in my head, the handkerchiefs are already knocking and telling me where this car is going to turn. It's like déjà vu all over again. And there was another incident. Camille did not finish listening to the fascinating story of the master and went through the restroom to her tiny office. It's a small room, no window. It used to be used as a storage room. But when the girl took possession, she decided to convert the room into her own office. The door was open, so she could hear everything that the salon's female employees talked about before the workday began. Jenna decided to express her opinion about the déjà vu effect. Master manicurist and masseuse at the same time. Emily. Everything is elementary. No fantasy. To understand where the car will turn is not difficult. Repeat. That's a rational observation. Emily was outraged, and you know it all, even if I send you to the erudite team. This provocative passage was answered in the same spirit. Emily, I don't understand the irony of your irony. Yes, and I know a lot, because I studied well in school and now I am constantly self-educating. Unlike some people, it wasn't a pebble, it was a cobblestone to an honorable employee. There was an immediate reaction. If you studied so well at school, why are there other people's fingernails here? Why didn't you go to university? Camille realized that a scandal was brewing. She rushed into the hall to defuse the situation. Nice women are doing something. You can probably hear it outside. Until then, Evelyn had said in a mysterious voice. They had awakened Kulu and were now in the beauty parlor of the ancient city, stammering, accustomed to the irreparable happening. Jenna rushed over to Evelyn with a towel, and everyone laughed. Emily remarked peacefully, "Don't mind us, Camille. We are not angry, so to speak, for the purpose of training change in the morning. And then the client will pile up, and there will be no time to have a word with each other. Maybe I'll go organize a cell. There's still time. You guys okay?" That question was directed at everyone except Camille. Jenna and Evelyn nodded their heads like Chinese dummies. In this cold, tea is better heated by the means. I was just baking pineapple yesterday. Appreciate my culinary skills. Jenna pulled an equally small bag out of her miniature purse. Evelyn glanced at the package and wrinkled his nose. "Jenna, who are you going to treat? You won't last long on a hint like that. You are our wicked woe. Come on, I'll teach you the proper way to trick or treat." In the recreation room, or simply household for whistling kettle and masters rushed to this sound. They forgot to invite their mistress for tea, but Camille had long since taken no offense at such trifles. She sat down in a vacant chair and thought. For all the apparent benevolence of this small group of women, did not want to recognize her as a hostess. A small salon, and also a cosmetics store nearby inherited the girl from her mother, who tragically died a little over a year ago. The girl herself at first was afraid of the inherited business, and at first was even going to sell the salon, but her grandmother managed to change her mind. But you sell the salon and store money to spend, and then that you will go yourself a piece of bread to get at least in memory of her mother to continue the business she started. Camille struggled for a long time, but then she gave in. All right, Grandma, you've talked me into it. I just don't understand. Why don't you go into such an interesting business yourself? Wendy rolled her eyes. She always did that to impress the person she was talking to. What are you talking about? 60 is too late to start something, and 22 is not too early. I'm barely out of college, and I've got this whole thing coming at me. It's an inheritance. You shouldn't blame your granddaughter for fate, and young age is the best time to start. The woman at this time engaged in conversations with her granddaughter and switched her brain to memories. With a quiet nostalgia in her voice, she said, "You know, Camille, when I was still in school, we were told about America by a long-distance captain. He was invited to our class hour. He said that even rich kids in the States were earning pocket money at that time, and they did not boast of their position and took any job. Washing dishes in cafes, delivering newspapers. Grandma, you should remember what it was like under Sir Garak. Everything has changed in half a century, and decaying capitalism has long since penetrated us." Wendy gave a confused nod. "Right, you're nice about everything. I'm really stuck somewhere in the past, and I can't get out of it." Camille looked at her grandmother in surprise, because she didn't understand how it was possible to be stuck in a time that had already been lived. But in the last few months, she had been mentally escaping more and more often herself to a place where her parents were still alive. There was something protective in her eyes, and Camille took a deep breath to keep from crying. Evelyn's voice came from the cabin. "Where have you been? Tea is ready." Camille shuddered in surprise and looked toward the cabin. Jenna was standing on the doorstep. "It's not good to split from the team. You're our hostess, but you're also a human being." Camille felt an unpleasant tingle in her stomach. She hadn't had breakfast today because of her grandmother, and now her empty stomach reminded her of that. "Thank you." But Jenna, was still smiling. Denial is not an option, and it's not hard to guess from your eyes that you forgot or just didn't have time to eat today. So put aside false modesty and go ahead. Camille happily drank hot tea and enjoyed the taste of fresh pastries. It crunched so amusingly like the snow under her feet. The girl held the kindling in her hands and smiled. Emily couldn't help herself. "Are you treats from Camille? Feel free to try the apple pie. It's Evelyn's specialty." The young salon hostess was warm and cozy with these simple women. She enjoyed eating the pastries, and life-wise Emily thought this girl was just a child. Jenna and Evelyn were also taking their eyes aside. The same thought must have crossed their minds as well. The front door slammed and Emily commanded all the girls, "Morning smoke break is over. It's time to get to work. Apparently it's a client who came to me for a haircut." The woman cheerfully got up and disappeared out the door. But she returned a few minutes later, confused and depressed. "Camille, who's asking for you?" "A guy as big as a 204 closet. I've never seen him before." "Emily, send him to my office." The girls quickly cleared the table, and only the smell of vanilla reminded of the recent tea party. Camille was waiting for a visitor in her office. From afar, she heard his disgruntled voice. "Not used to it. I'm not used to walking through nooks and crannies. Would your mistress please come out?" A tall man in his 30s completely covered his size with his body. The entrance to the study. He looked down on Camille as if she were a small insect. The girl lived under this unpleasant gaze, but kept her composure. "I'm listening attentively." "Is that you, mistress?" Not a muscle in the girl's face quivered. She withstood the insolent man's gaze and calmly answered, "Yes, I am." "And what do not suit you?" Not expecting an invitation from the visitors, I plumped into the only chair. "Yes, I don't really care. It's just that the subject came up and I was instructed to pass it on." The man froze and looked at Camille's face again. No kidding. You're definitely the hostess. This is not a setup. Were you in the waiting room able to see the license? Our salon operates in full compliance with the law. I don't mind. I don't care that much. but I've never met such a young hostess before. He was still staring unceremoniously at the lady of the house. But there was something in that look that made the girl blush. But the guest did not hurry to state the purpose of his visit. No, it's a real mishap. I was told that the aunt is in charge of everything here. I see a nice lady, but maybe it's for the best. With a pretty girl like that, it'll be easier for us to make a deal. What are you going to negotiate with me? I'm sorry, but I don't have time for idle chatter, so I'll ask you to get to the point. The artist laughed. I like to be asked to get to the point. I'm second to none in that regard, and I can quite satisfy your interest. The insolence of the visitor began to piss him off. Camille picked up the landline phone. The visitor was frightened. What are you up to? I'll call the police and have them remove your presence. Why did you come into my salon? And you're talking nonsense. The man put his huge paw on the girl's arm. Wait, beautiful. Take your time. It's just an excess of feelings. Did you make a hell of an impression on me? I'm here on business. My landlord wants to buy this salon and store. That's impossible. Why not? Because I'm not gonna sell my business. This conversation is over. Goodbye. Camille got up from her desk and headed for the exit. But a visitor blocked her way. No, that was not the deal. It's the first time I've ever seen you, and I don't know your boss and don't want to know him. The girl was shaking either from fear or indignation. The visitor pulled off his star cap from his head and wiped his sweating forehead with it. Apparently simple words the girl does not understand. Too bad. Then I'll have to explain more harshly. Listen here, beautiful. My master is a very respected man, and he had an agreement with the former owner of this place. I don't know anything about that. And my mom died. It's been almost a year. Our condolences, but that doesn't change the case. Forgotten landlady and a debt owed. My master doesn't forgive such things. He warned your mother too, but she didn't take it to heart. That's why the meter is counting. But we are not beasts. And my master is ready to buy your salon and store. In a breaking voice, Camille screamed in the face of the scoundrel, I won't sell anything. Don't be in a hurry, Belle. You have a month to think about it. And don't forget that the clock is ticking and the debt is growing. There were lively voices from the hall, interrupted by the sound of merry music. But Camille was shaking with fear. Several times she picked up the phone and put it down again. Evelyn came into the office. Camille, we need to order the compound for the bomb. We're running out of gloves. Oh, what's the matter with you? You don't have a face. No, it's okay, it's okay. Go ahead. I'll be sure to order. For the rest of the day, the girl could think of nothing else but the strange visitor. Her late mother never involved her in her affairs. Her grandmother had shown no interest in the business either, so there was almost nowhere to make inquiries. But Camille at that moment was very much mistaken with her conclusions. The girl was going to ask her grandmother about everything about her parents' business. She only knew that her father had been given some money to start his own business. He decided to start a car repair business because he was good at it. But the business almost immediately stalled, and the man sold the unprofitable enterprise. And Camille's mother persuaded him to give her the proceeds of the sale. Sam, I have a good idea. I've already thought of everything. Camille remembers well how her mother convinced her father in the kitchen that beauty is the most profitable business. The girl was still in the 3rd grade and was too young to understand the essence of the conversation. But she remembered her father's words well. Vanessa, from afar, a tree barely seems like a forest. And when you look closer, you realize that everything is not as it seemed. It's the same thing in business. I also believe that car service will be in great demand. But I made a big mistake. You have to consider scale here. So you're saying that success depends on geography. Of course. There's a direct correlation. And that's where I almost lost money. After all, people in small towns have lower incomes than in a major metropolis. Hence the low purchasing power. Basically, it's nothing new. This is the basis of economics, which you should always remember. Trust me, the same fate awaits your salon. Although your plan is feasible even on the scale of our town. Sam, will you give me the money? What other choice do I have? Of course I will. But you'll have to ask Vanessa to defer the payment. Sam Vanessa is the kindest of people. we're sure she won't refuse you. She's already done so much for us. There's just one thing I don't understand. Why is Mom so prejudiced against her? Vanessa, you know I'm not one for gossip, but the locals say she and Vanessa have a long-standing feud. That's the reason your mother left the regional center and settled in this town, where rich people like to vacation. I can't confirm it, but that's what they say. By the way, I was also hoping for a wealthy clientele who spend a vacation session here. But life has shown that wealthy citizens suffer from pathological greed. I don't agree with you. Only in one thing against female beauty cannot resist even millionaires. That's why salon services are a priority for rich ladies. They know a lot of ways to extort money from a stingy husband. Vanessa, I didn't even realize you were a psychologist. Parents didn't hide from their daughter when discussing business matters. But then, by virtue of her young age, Camille did not understand much of the conversations of adults, and most often information difficult for children's perception flew in one ear and out of the other. But this past year, events began to emerge from the past, which in the reflection of the current day took on a completely different meaning. And it's a conversation my parents had a long time ago. Memory did not randomly give out of its archive either. Camille walked in confusion around the apartment where her happiest years had flown by. Everything here still reminded of her parents and created the illusion of the presence of people dear to her heart. There was only one thought in her brain. Aunt Vanessa, why am I thinking of her now? Vanessa wasn't a frequent visitor to their home, but she always showed up with gifts. Camille disliked the old lady, which displeased his parents. One day, the father decided to find out the reason for his daughter's dislike for her acquaintance. Tell me honestly, why did you rob Aunt Vanessa? After all, she brings you so many gifts. Without thinking, Camille spoke up. She's in the shower, and I don't need her presence. Dad was surprised. What a number. And for some reason, he thought Vanessa was a toy. She has eyes like a witch, and she's not telling the truth. When the grandmother learned about this conclusion of her granddaughter, she told her daughter Vanessa, do not forget that the mouth of a child speaks the truth. Children can sense insincerity from a distance. Unfortunately, this ability fades with age. So, alas, Vanessa's grimaces and sweet words are taken at face value. In general, for little Camille, her grandmother was a role model. The girl absorbed her every word and believed in everything Wendy said. The girl felt the urgent need for her grandmother's involvement and dialed her number. Wendy answered at once, finally deigned to call. I already thought that you had completely forgotten about my existence. Grandma, I called you last night. Really? Then why didn't I remember it? The girl guessed the cause of Wendy's unconsciousness by her voice and manner of speaking. And it was not difficult to guess that the woman had already had time to take a revelatory drink, as she herself called strengthening wine. It was a bad habit she picked up after the tragic death of her daughter. Camille many times tried to instruct her grandmother on the path of truth, but she was annoyed and advised to take care of themselves. Therefore, the granddaughter decided not to focus on this fact. Grandma, we all tend to forget little things, and sometimes even important events. You know, today I was thinking of Aunt Vanessa Camille. Please don't even mention that name to me. But why? What did that woman do that you don't want to talk about her? Well, she didn't do anything in particular, except for one mean thing. Maybe someday I'll tell you all about it. But not now. It's not time yet. Okay, but I still have some questions that only you can answer. I stopped by at the other end of the Shelkovo, and then I heard someone else's laughter. No, granddaughter, you can rest today, and they're in the mood for a serious conversation. And besides, I'm not alone. That's where we should have started. All right, then I'll come by tomorrow morning, Camille. But not too early. Don't bother me. I'm an old man, you know, and I need a good night's rest. The girl threw the telephone coffee table with annoyance. I know about the peculiarities of your vacation, and you don't need to cover yourself with age. She realized that she had no moral right to judge her grandmother, but at the insertion of the bottle, Wendy began to turn into a serious problem. The once trim, attractive woman, in just a year, turned into a perpetually disgruntled person with a permanently antique face. Many acquaintances were bluntly expressing ideas. They made unpleasant remarks. Why have you watched your grandmother? Can't you see that a person is drinking? In the salon, women also often discussed this topic behind their backs. But for some reason, all the well-wishers blamed Camille for Grandma's weakness. And that was what depressed the girl most of all. In the evening, she tried to dial her relative's number again, but in response, she only heard long beeps. As soon as there was light outside the windows, Camille was already on her feet. She decided to visit Wendy first and then stop by the salon. She pressed the bell button for a long time until she heard the familiar charket and footsteps outside the door. I asked you to come later, but come, don't just stand in the doorway. Otherwise, curious faces will start sticking out. The girl carefully shut the door behind her. Grandma, what's the fashionable thing to say? Whose faces are you so angry about? Of course, whose? It's my neighbor's habit of peeping and eavesdropping. Yesterday, we were also sitting there, relaxing quietly and modestly. And here we are. What happened at your party last night? The downstairs neighbor showed up early to warn us. All that gentle singing got in their way. Camille's put the kettle on. It's better not to grumble. Now we'll have tea with you. You're scolding the neighbors for nothing. They also have the right to a quiet life, and I don't disturb them. If that were true, they wouldn't bother you with their evening visits. Camille, have you come to lecture me, or are you trying to be supportive? More of the latter. The kitchen was a mess, and the girl had a hard time finding a free chair, on which she sat Wendy, and herself sat down on a small upholstered path that did not match the interior of the room. The old woman sighed heavily and nervously fumbled with the hem of her robe. She tried not to look her granddaughter Camille in the eye. I'm sorry. For what? You're always a good thing to me. What do you see yourself in? Everything. That's why I drink, to forget myself. I can't forgive myself for what happened first to Sam, then to Wendy. Do those words nail a girl to the golden sweet floor? Grandma's got something on her mind. You can't do that. You're not responsible for their deaths. And the investigation confirmed it. What you're talking about, granddaughter, you're a tracker. Just to get the case out of your hands as soon as possible and report back. After all, no one was really investigating at that time, although I asked and even wrote to the highest authorities. Grandma, wait, I don't understand. What are you talking about? That your parents didn't die by accident. Do you have any facts to back that up? That's the thing, I don't. It's all conjecture. But I do know that Vanessa was threatened a few days before she died. Sam mentioned some phone calls too. Camille remembered the recent visit of an unfamiliar jock, and an unpleasant shiver ran through her body again. Surprisingly, I had a very unpleasant fellow come into my parlor the other day. Wendy stood up abruptly, and the table fell with a clatter. There was horror in her eyes. Camille, what did this man say to you? I didn't quite understand, but I think he threatened me too. Said my mom had an unpaid debt, and now I owed the landlord to make up for the loss. What was he spitting? I still don't fully understand. The older woman grabbed the girl's hands. My girl, you have no idea how serious this is. These scary people will do anything. You need to go to the police right away, or do you want me to go myself? Where are you going dressed like that? Look at yourself in the mirror and really look like a grandma. Let's get this over with. You've turned your house into a shelter for the abused and the poor. Remember, it wasn't that long ago that you were judging people who were addicted to booze, and now you're addicted. Wendy tucked into her granddaughter's shoulder and cried bitterly. If you knew, my girl, what a heavy weight on my heart. It tears me from the inside, and I don't know how to go on living. The girl stroked her grandmother's back like a little child. That's how Wendy used to comfort her. And now she's trying to restore her loved one's faith in herself. Grandma, don't beat yourself up for nothing, and don't look for fault where there is none. And give it up. I'll try, I promise you. I'm disgusted with myself, but don't disregard my advice and go to the authorities. What am I going to tell them? That you've been threatened. Facts. There's no proof, and I don't know the guy who came to see me. He's definitely not from around here. Soon the morning conversation with her grandmother was forgotten because she had to deal with a conflict situation at the salon. One customer had written a complaint against Evelyn and even demanded financial compensation for the wrongly cut teacher's hair. Evelyn sobbed in the back room. Camille, that broad has 3 hairs on 2 appliances. I gave her a fancy haircut from what she had. Should I transplant my curls? Emily winked at the hostess too. Let me see if I can straighten this out. That lady loves to make a scene. She's never satisfied. Not 10 minutes later, the master would be back, sending her home. Evelyn came to life so quickly. And what did you do? Oh, nothing much. A little scissors around her ankles and then backcombed her hair. Now our client's gonna have a cool haircut for a week. In high spirits, Camille headed home after a day of work. She decided to stop for groceries on her way to the store. The streets were deserted, so she immediately noticed a car with tinted windows following her. An unpleasant feeling of shivering ran through her body again. The girl tried to calm herself. I had imagined it. Now I turned down a blind alley and the pursuit would stop. But the car also turned to the shameful street unexpectedly for itself. Camille ran across the street right in front of the car, and in a few minutes was already near the shopping center. She looked around and breathed a sigh of relief. The car that had followed her was gone. The deputy chief of the district police department looked at her with undisguised derision. He cast a careless glance at the sheet of paper on which her details were marked. Dear Camille, I understand your concern, but I want you to understand my concern as well. There are no facts that there is a real threat to your life. What you have told me here is based only on your hunches and suspicions. It's no basis for a case. Comrade Major, but I'm not LSU and the salon staff can confirm it. They saw that man come in, but they can't say they heard him threaten you. Yeah, but can they? And I'll tell you again, your fears are nothing to worry about. Do I have to wait until I'm killed? I take it that's the only time you'll have an excuse. My dear girl, why go to extremes? I'm not a nice girl. All right, Camille, perhaps you're tired and you're imagining things. The girl could hardly hold back her tears. She wanted to tell this indifferent man in uniform everything she had to say. Comrade or Mr. Major, I've heard such words many times. You see, but it only shows your unwillingness to help. 4 years ago, my father died under very strange circumstances, and last year my mother was killed. They were also threatened, and my mother even appealed to the district police officer in the hope that she would be helped. But she was not heard, and she died. Wait. I remember that case, or rather, I was told about it. So you're the daughter of a smaller business that crashed, and you claim that your mother was threatened too. Did you see or hear them? No, but my mom told me. You see, there you go again, all that uncertainty. The major suddenly smiled as big as if he just won a big Camille prize. It happens. You've been through so much. Shocks are very hard on the nervous system. Have you seen a specialist? What kind of specialist? The major waved one hand uncertainly, but kept smiling. I'm not good at medicine, but I've heard that there is one. Camille jumped up as if she had been doused with boiling water. You think I'm crazy? I came to you for help. Did you? The girl ran out of the chief's office and in the doorway ran into an employee who was in a hurry to get to the major's office. It is given by Comrade Major. Why are you hurting girls? If I'm not mistaken, this new owner of the Salon Paris. Do you know her? How can I put it? A little. Last year I was a district officer and the girl came to me after the death of her mother. The major shook his head understandingly. Talked about harassment, threats, and suspicion. Something like that, but no specifics. And she has a grandmother you should know. Smith's crazy too. She used to work in the mayor's front office. After her daughter died, she started using. The cop gestured to the meaning of the expression. Oh yeah, it's like a Mexican soap opera. My grandmother also complained to me about threats and harassment. But you can't trust a witness like that, you know. Just out of respect for her age, I'm not putting a record on this woman. But neighbors often complain about her, and we must respond to such signals. And there should be no discounting of age and status. We have tools to influence antisocial elements, but they have taken the fashion of going door to door, begging with their grievances. The major was not on a joke, and the former district officer already regretted that he had reminded him of last year's story. So the captain decided not to go into the details of that tragedy. although he also had suspicions that the successful businesswoman had not died accidentally. The policeman then tried to prove this fact to continue the investigation, but he was called to the carpet and told off. And then he was transferred to the police department. He saw it as punishment for taking unnecessary initiative. Camille walked slowly down the street, not noticing the hurrying passers-by. She was at a complete loss and did not know what to do. Her grandmother did not answer the phone again, and the girl decided to go to the cemetery. In difficult moments, she always visited her mother's grave. Father was buried in his small homeland, so decided his relatives. Grandma scolded them at the time. "What are you doing? Camille, Sam's only daughter, and you're denying her the opportunity to visit her father's grave." But the aunt, the dead man's own sister, said firmly that if her daughter wanted to, she could come and do her duty any minute. "But I won't bury my brother here. It's not a good place." I didn't like Sam's idea of settling here, but he persisted. And here's the result. My father burned to death in the bathhouse. He and the men first went fishing, had a few drinks, then decided to have a steam bath. They noticed the father's absence at dinner. They rushed to the bathhouse, and he was there without signs of life. Everyone decided that the man was poisoned by carbon monoxide because there was a specific odor in the room. But the company members were surprised by this circumstance. So someone closed his skirt early on purpose. But none of us could have done that. We're not amateurs. No one believed that the deceased had created the dangerous situation. Camille's mother was shocked, and the relatives who came from far away did not authorize an autopsy. Therefore, the death of a very young and healthy man remained unsolved, still a mystery. Spring only warmed the earth a little, timidly, so there were puddles and mud everywhere. Camille struggled to get to a bed behind which stood a large wooden cross, a memorial she and her grandmother planned to erect closer to Summer. Camille stroked the picture from which her smiling mother looked at her and wept bitterly. "Mommy, my darling, how much do I miss you? I feel like I'm living behind a transparent wall. I see people, I try to talk to them, but they can't hear me. Mommy, can you tell me what to do?" This plea went on and on in the girl's heart. At this moment, she felt lonely and not needed by anyone. But suddenly a woman's voice sounded very close behind her back. "Humility alone will soothe the soul." Camille shuddered. She turned around sharply and saw in front of her a woman wearing a black shawl covering most of her face. She wanted to ask the stranger what her strange words meant, but the woman slipped past her and seemed to melt into thin air. The girl became frightened and hurried to leave the cemetery. In the evening, she told her grandmother about the mysterious stranger, but Wendy was not surprised. She must have bumped into her. She went to the cemetery every day. Her son had died. It's been a while. It's been over 10 years. The poor mother comes to talk to him. "Grandma, I talked to my mom too. That's not normal." The old woman looked at her granddaughter with surprise. "Why do you think so?" "I now doubt my sanity at all. I went to the police today. The other day I thought I was being followed. No, that's for sure, because a car was following me and then turned the same way I turned to check out this obscure surveillance. Then that guy who came by in the winter. I don't like all this. It can't be an accident." Grandma was washing dishes and froze with a plate in her hand. "And what did the police tell you?" The girl laughed nervously. "You won't believe it. The major advised me to see a doctor. That's to be expected. I, too, went to our police officer after Vanessa's death. He seemed to listen to me at first. He even promised to reopen the investigation. But then everything went quiet. And when I asked again, they just politely kicked me out the door. And you started drinking after that." Wendy burst into tears. "It's 1-to-1. I'm not made of metal. I don't have a heart of stone. I lost my only daughter. They look at me like I'm crazy. Where do I look for justice? Yeah, grandmothers. I, too, had the feeling today that the world was divided by an impenetrable wall of indifference." The last thing Camille expected was a call from Vanessa. An old friend of her late parents called before the weekend and asked her to come over urgently. "Camille, honey, it's very urgent, okay? Aunt Vanessa, I'll be there as soon as I have a minute." "No, my girl. Time is of the essence. Come over tomorrow. Do you remember my address? I haven't forgotten. Camille was puzzled by this call because Vanessa wasn't even at her mother's funeral. She didn't call to explain her absence. She didn't come afterwards to visit the grave. The girl cared the least about the fate of this unpleasant woman. That's why she didn't make inquiries. And then suddenly Aunt Vanessa found her on her own. I wonder why she needed it so urgently? But Camille did not absorb this call into the chain of strange events. After all, Vanessa was already at the age when people often do unexpected things. The girl first planned to go to the regional center on her father's car, which had been bored in the garage for many years. But the memory of the tragedy that happened to her mother stopped her. I'll go. I'd rather take the bus, it's more reliable. But the traveler did not know that the vehicle of local destination will stop at each village on the way. As a result of this unusual route, it took her more than 4 o'clock to reach the city, all exhausted and hungry. She rang the doorbell of the apartment she had visited once before with her mother. Vanessa must have been waiting for her in the hallway because the door opened immediately. Camille, what took you so long? I took the bus. Our public transportation is a disaster. I only use it on rare occasions. Otherwise, I take my car or a cab. I didn't know you were an experienced driver. Oh no, I'm not much of a driver, but I have my own chauffeur when I need him. He's always at the ready. He's a good, kind guy. He does all my errands. What kind of errands can an old woman run? The woman used this popular maneuver to get a compliment, and she got it. Vanessa, you underestimate yourself. You look beautiful, and you're sure men are looking at you. Mistress Nancy drowned Camille's gaze. You make me blush. At my age, it's time to think about mortality, not men. And I've had no luck with them all my life. And now I often wonder if they're all like that, or if I'm the only one who's ever been a jerk. In the mouth of an old lady dressed in a luxurious robe, the coarse language sounded kind of sweet. The spacious apartment was tastefully furnished too. It was expensive. You could feel it in everything. It's cozy here. The woman had realized. Why am I keeping you at my doorstep? Let's go and have a cup of tea and have a heart-to-heart talk. The suggestion of a heart-to-heart was immediately alarming. But intuition told her to be on her guard. Vanessa led her guest into the spacious living room, where tea dishes were left on the coffee table. She didn't stop talking for a moment. Camille thought that this was the behavior of people who were either badly confused or trying to put the interlocutor's vigilance to sleep. At first, she was more inclined to the first option. But after the first words of the hostess, she realized that Vanessa had not good intentions towards her. Make yourself comfortable, and I'll bring tea. The woman slowly went to the kitchen, and the guest went to the oak wall. Behind the glass, a Chinese set shone with luxury, but it was several photographs that caught her attention. In one picture, Camille saw a familiar face, but she could not immediately remember where she had seen it. A voice came from behind her. This is my daughter Nancy. She lives in the States now. I was terribly worried when she decided to go to a foreign country, but my girl made the right choice. At least I'm lucky for that. The hostess poured Ella tea in a miniature cup, and she herself kept looking at the guest. It was a piercing stare. Camille felt uncomfortable. Vanessa, you said you had something very urgent to do with me, didn't you? Forgive my slowness. You must be in a hurry. If I miss the last bus, I'll have to walk. You stay here. I've got plenty of room. Thanks for the invitation, but I have to be at work tomorrow morning. We're having a small event, and my presence is essential. Camille's attentive gaze did not escape her. Vanessa tensed at those words. In her voice, there appeared a faint surprise. You are telling what kind of events can be in a rural beauty parlor. Gosti carefully placed her cup on the napkin. You know, the most beautiful girls and women live in the countryside. It's just a different kind of real beauty. And our institution decided to join the action. Beauty will conquer the world. By the way, this cause originates here in the regional center. How interesting. And what's the point? Nothing special. A certain day is chosen. And to all women who have a birthday on this date, our masters serve absolutely free. Brides are on a first-come, first-served basis. Vanessa was clearly surprised. I think it's unjustified generosity. You could go down the drain. No, it's not. As a rule, there's not a lot of applicants. The promotion only lasts a few hours. But the owners get some perks too. No, it's still very dangerous. Personally, I am very responsible to the financial issue and never throw money into the wind. In principle, that's why I invited you. The woman was silent, choosing words. Do you understand? Camille Klochko, I'm not comfortable talking about it, but I have to do it. Your late mother. We were friends with your parents for so long. It's a shame they passed away prematurely. Vanessa gestured beautifully at the nearest tear, but Camille didn't buy the gesture. She remained silent and looked directly into the eyes of her interlocutor. After a short pause, she continued, but her voice was firm and confident. I must inform you that Vanessa borrowed a small sum from me shortly before her death. I know nothing about it. Do you have a receipt? How could I? Vanessa and I were on trust. Sometimes I borrowed from her. And on occasion, she got weird. According to the financials, Mom was doing well. I don't know why she needed to borrow money. And she didn't like credit. She always tried to make do with what she had. The landlady became very agitated, as evidenced by the vapors on her forehead. It was an unusual situation. So, Vanessa, let's make a deal like this. I'll check with my lawyer, and then I'll call you back. He should be up to date on everything. And if everything you've told me here checks out, I'll pay you back every penny. Vanessa was desperate. Camille, you don't believe me. Let's just say I doubt it. And let me ask you how much we're talking about. Stammering. The hostess gave a figure and Camille laughed. But that's absurd. Vanessa, you're not mistaken. The hostess managed to pull herself together and said defiantly, I don't have any abnormalities like your grandmother. What does my grandmother have to do with this sudden transition? Wendy ruined my life once, and the trail of her malice runs to this day. And we were practically cousins. There were no more tears in the landlady's voice. And at first I hated it. Camille wanted to leave the house, but Vanessa stopped her. Don't hurry, my dear. I haven't said everything yet. I thought we'd settle this thing amicably, and you'd sign a commitment, and I wouldn't sign anything without a lawyer. All the more reason I don't understand what you're claiming. I'm sorry, but I get the impression you're just trying to take some money from me, although the amount of money you're claiming isn't exactly modest. Why on earth should I pay you? Your family owes me and my daughter an eternal debt. It's thanks to Wendy that my little girl was raised by her stepfather without a father. She's the one who must have ruined my happiness. And these poor little crumbs are just a fraction of that. Are you serious? It's a penny to you. Don't you think you're trying to cheat me right now? And I might as well report you. Let me through. Vanessa stood in the doorway like an indestructible rock, but there was a small space through which Camille slipped into the antechamber, skirting the sad figure of the landlady. The girl glanced again at the picture under the glass in the wall. And at this critical moment, she recognized the smiling Vike, who was embracing the brightly painted maiden, the jock who had appeared at her salon in winter. With one jerk, she swung open the apartment door and started running down the stairs. Only when she was on the first floor did she realize that the apartment building had an elevator. A pretty old lady, introduced as a janitor or concierge, shouted little, "Why are you walking?" "We have serviceable elevators. It's okay. It's good for your health." Once outside, Camille couldn't breathe in the fresh air. She felt like she'd been in a cramped cave for over an hour. Involuntarily, she looked up and noticed a familiar silhouette in the window of the 6th floor, flying off apparently the old one. This involuntarily expressed in an exclamation made her turn around, walking with a baby stroller couple. All the way back, Camille thought about what she had heard and seen. The mosaic of strange facts was beginning to form into a unified picture, but there were still many fragments missing. So she decided to go straight to Wendy's. She needed to get answers to this cascade of questions. Oh, what an unexpected encounter. Wendy, it all came out of joy. She herself emanated a bright wine ambergray. Camille couldn't help herself. "Grandma, you promised me." The woman made some absurd movement with her legs, but she didn't realize it and almost fell. Her granddaughter was there in time to pick her up. "Oh my God, you're so drunk." "No, I'm not. I killed just a little bit. Jack, A neighbor bought me a drink. You can't say no when a nice man gives you a drink. Come on, I'll show you to your bedroom. The best thing for you right now is to get a good night's sleep. You're right, as always. My darling girl. The woman staggered toward the bedroom. Camille, I didn't just have a drink tonight. I had a good reason. I wonder what I went to Klaravika's grave today. It's such a beautiful monument. You're smart. Mom deserved such a memorial. In the hustle and bustle, Camille forgot to tell her grandmother that 2 days ago the workers of the ritual company installed the monument, so the recognition of a relative surprised her. But how did you know? Kind people told me. You're always busy. Jack was at his mom's grave. She saw him not far from ours. And then he drove me in his car. And then he bought me a drink. Really, the ubiquitous kindness left only to hand out balloons to all the passersby on the street. Wendy didn't answer anything because she was already having pleasant dreams. Dusk began to fade outside the window, and Camille wanted to go home, but someone rang the doorbell. The girl struggled with the lock for a long time, and when she opened the door, she saw a man with a huge bag. Although the guest was quite drunk, his appearance and good suit testified to his normal social status. He put the package in front of him and solemnly said, "And here's a present for you, Santa Claus. Where is my kind Wendy?" The guests took a step forward, trying to get into the apartment. But Camille firmly pushed him back to the landing. "Grandmother is resting, and I suggest you go home too. And New Year's Eve was 6 months ago, more than that. So you're a little late with your presents." The man was confused. How could he be? We agreed that we'd sit down tonight and relax. The members of our cell should still come. The man laughed out loud, thinking his joke was a good one. But Camille didn't even smile. "Good citizen, please go to your home. How are you? You have a drink with your cell." Camille slammed the door in front of the guest's nose. He yelled, "Tell Wendy Jack came by." Jesus, seemed like a decent man. Why do people drink? And then they turn into animals. I'll have to keep watch tonight. Grandmother's peace of mind, or someone else will come along. Camille walked carefully through the apartment and noticed with bitterness that there was dust everywhere. Trying not to make any noise, she cleaned the living room. Then she washed all the dishes in the kitchen. In the refrigerator, lonely bored native carcass with varuher, at least soup. Empty pots. It wasn't hard to guess that Wendy hadn't cooked a full meal in a long time. In the evenings, she sometimes dined with her granddaughter, and during the day it was seen, interrupted, and with what she had to. Camille was overwhelmed with emotion. Something must be done about it urgently, otherwise she would endanger herself. When the apartment was cleaned up, the clock read almost 11 o'clock. But the day's events kept her awake. Camille turned on the floor lamp and went to the bookshelf. Reading had always been an effective sleeping aid. She had already reached out to pick up a detective book by a famous writer, but she noticed an old scrapbook. The tradition of keeping family pictures and albums was a thing of the past. Now everyone has their own folder in the computer, and if you want, you can remember pleasant moments from life. Rarities interested the girl, and she began to carefully flip through the pages of the album. A long time ago, back in her childhood, her grandmother showed her pictures of relatives and even told her about them. But Camille had not been interested in family history then. Now she looked with surprise at the unfamiliar faces of people with whom she was connected by an unbreakable thread of kinship. Many of the pictures were very old. The women in them wore old-fashioned floor-length dresses, and the men wore surtouts and vests. In other pictures, she could hardly recognize her grandmother. How beautiful and young she was. In many of the pictures, there was a pleasant-looking young man next to Wendy, very much like her. The girl couldn't help but say out loud, could that really be a brother? She never told me she had a brother. And I cut him out of my life once and for all. Camille didn't notice her grandmother leave her bedroom, though her appearance suggested she wasn't feeling well. She tried not to show it. The woman took a seat next to her granddaughter. You know the proverb about the child without an eye that spoils the life of 7 nannies? Who doesn't know it? But what does folklore have to do with it? Wendy sighed heavily. It has everything to do with the fact that we had such an ugly child in our family. That's my brother, Michael. I've been hiding this album. Did you find it? I guess I forgot to put it away the last time. Sometimes, especially lately, I look at these old pictures, flip through this album, and it's like a memory revisited. Camille, if you wouldn't mind fetching some water. Wendy made a full glass. Vanessa never learned the whole story. The girl was burning with impatience. That's how children wait for their secrets to be revealed in front of them. The magic box. Grandma, I'm going to faint from curiosity. Don't drown me. Tell me what you've been hiding so carefully all these years. Vanessa also spoke in riddles yesterday. The woman even jumped on the spot. You went to Vanessa's? Yeah, what's the big deal? She called me and asked me to come over right away. Wendy collapsed on the couch again. What a bastard. She got to you. What kind of songs did she sing to you? She knows how to talk dirty. She's second to none. She demanded money, said my mom owed her money, but I didn't believe her. It's all lies. Sam borrowed a small amount of money from her at first, but they paid it off right away. I found out too late, or I wouldn't have let them get involved with that person. I mean, she's a real bitch. She's a real bitch. She's invaded their trust, and I have my suspicions about her. Breathless, the girl looked at her grandmother and the latter at her. Grandma, that's what I'm thinking. Or something else. Perhaps we are troubled by the same thought. I've been thinking about it for over a year now. It's already become an obsession. I've only been thinking about it for a few hours, but I'm already sleep deprived. Why don't you tell me all the family secrets? Wendy started her narrative with apparent difficulty, but quickly became engrossed and even forgot about her poor health. Camille listened to her grandmother with her mouth open. She had never thought that such stories happened in real life. Wendy's great-grandfather was a family of famous Smith industrialists. The ancestors were famous not only for their fabulous wealth, but also for their generosity. Several generations were engaged in patronage of the arts and still preserved buildings built on their money, which found shelter for orphans and disadvantaged people. But when hard times came, most of the wealthy citizens hurried to hide with their goods abroad. The family was large, and not everyone agreed to live in a foreign land. The most enterprising of them secretly absconded with the family capital, leaving their relatives with nothing. My father told me that then, in a fit of anger, the eldest of the Smiths cursed the absent-minded grandson. This Alex was a banker, and it went straight to his head overseas. It was like a smudge, but we found out later, because at that time there could be no connection with foreign countries. For relatives, you could even pay for your freedom. But God had mercy on us. And what became of this Alex? He came to his homeland, he did. But it was later, during the thaw. I was very young then, and Michael was 6 years older than me. Alex was already old, barely on his feet, but proud. He kept inviting our father to visit him in America. But my father immediately sent my uncle to a known address. He, of course, took offense, but Michael was shocked by the American story. The guy just raved about America. True, only I knew about it, because he trusted me. A grandmother, but no Pole. What happened next is what happened next. Secretly, Ethan corresponded first with Alex. And when he died, he started corresponding with someone named Thomas. He was sort of his confidant. Twice this Thomas came to the country and Michael traveled with him. By that time, my brother was married and had a little daughter. Fetko knew several languages and worked as a translator. And then he was sent on a business trip abroad. Wendy sobbed. I still remember that day as if it happened yesterday. We had never suffered such shame in our lives. In the middle of the night, people in all black came to us and started asking us about Mitchell. I won't tell you all the details, but you don't need to. Anyway, that's what our freethinker always called him. Father sought asylum in the States. Father's heart couldn't bear the shame. A defector's son is a stigma on the reputation of a party worker. It's a good thing Mom wasn't there to witness it. She died early. That's the story. Grandma, wait. What happened to Michael's wife and daughter? Didn't you figure it out? No. Camille was staring wide-eyed at Grandma. Do you mean to say that Mom, yes, Vanessa, Michael's daughter, and his unhappy wife, couldn't bear the shame? Benjamin was dragged round and round to investigators' offices. Interrogated, believed to be in league with her husband. The poor woman couldn't take it and went insane. I took Vanessa in. I gave her a different patronymic so that there would be no memory of the affair. Yeah, it's a heavy story, like a movie. Except it's a very violent movie. But I want to believe it has a happy ending. Grandma, wait, you didn't tell me about Vanessa. Vanessa. Vanessa is the upstart who's been grooming Michael for a long time. She wasn't shy around anyone, not even her brother's legal wife. Benjamin even caught her with her husband once. She wanted a divorce, but she forgave him. Fecka went quiet for a while, but then he went on again. I do not exclude even that the brother wanted to run abroad with his mistress. But it didn't work out, apparently, because of the documents. So Vanessa was left with nothing. Why does she hate you? Because I've broken them up on more than one occasion when they've had their meetings in a rented apartment. And when Michael disappeared, she came to me and claimed she had her brother's daughter. But I don't believe it, because Vanessa is the worst bitch I've ever seen. She got married 5 times after that, but all of them failed. Well, that depends on what you call luck. She's got an apartment full of expensive furniture. You can tell she's not in need. Yeah, she also said her daughter lives in America. It was Wendy's turn to be surprised. That's an interesting fact. I didn't know that. Yeah, well, I guess we have a lot to learn. My grandmother keeps me wondering what our relatives are up to. And why do they need us? The woman was indignant. They are not relatives, and don't even think about it. And don't go to Vanessa anymore. I have a bad feeling about this. Camille felt uneasy in her heart, but she did not tell her grandmother. The next day, she remembered her visit to Vanessa and the young man in the photograph. She recognized him as the unshaven jock who had come to the salon. Another puzzle of the mosaic matched, and it was scaring the girl. Wendy gave in to her granddaughter's entreaties and decided to stay with her temporarily. Camille believed that the move would relieve her grandmother of the desire to gather company again. The old woman even looked better. She had a desire to do something useful. She spent her indomitable energy in the kitchen, trying to please her granddaughter with delicious dishes. When she noticed that Camille was going somewhere, she called her loudly. You should eat first, and then you can go to all 4 corners of the world. Grandma, I'd rather go to the cemetery later. Fresh flowers to put on Mom's grave. Wendy was surprised. Did you decide to drive after all? The girl winked cheerfully. Yeah, only I have 2 wheels. It's good for your health to drive with a full stomach. I'll make a quick trip there and back. It was about 5 kilometers to the cemetery. In a straight line, the path was almost halved. The girl had long ago mastered this route, and in a quarter of an hour she was there. Even from afar, she noticed a woman's figure, which seemed familiar to her. Camille beautifully arranged the flowers and sat down on a bench. She looked at the portrait of her mother frozen in marble and half whispered about her difficult life. Having been carried away by the communication with her visible interlocutor, the girl did not notice that the old acquaintance was next to her. The woman looked her directly in the eyes and remained silent. Camille felt a familiar sense of discomfort. You wanted to ask me something. Why aren't you saying anything? Beware of Vanessa. She's the trouble. Camille didn't notice the strange woman disappear again. She went down to the road and looked into the distance. But the woman was nowhere to be seen. The bus stop was deserted too. Some kind of obsession, as if the stupid woman had fallen through the ground. From the saddle of her new horse, Camille set off on the return journey, but all the way back she was haunted. The feeling that someone was watching her. She stopped several times, but did not notice anything suspicious. Cars whizzed by, but no one paid attention to the lone cyclist. To reassure herself, she said in a low voice, "Perhaps the major was right, and I have a persecution mania. I feel like someone's eyes are burning into my back. I can feel it physically." Looking around once more and making sure she was in no danger, Camille walked slowly down the familiar road. The excitement had receded a little, and she admired the beauty of the blooming summer. The girl was driving on such a bridge when suddenly a body jammed and lit up nearby, but she had no time to turn her head at this strange sound, because an unknown force lifted her above the ground and threw her down. She woke up to a terrible pain in her leg. It really hurt. A guy in shorts and a stylish baseball cap looked at her carefully. "How are you feeling?" "I'm not dizzy. I haven't quite figured out yet. Who are you?" The guy was still watching her. "I'm William, but that's it. My name is William. Let me help you up. My car's up here." Camille tried to stand up, but immediately cried out in sharp pain. "My leg must be broken, but you got it, and I saw the whole thing. That asshole pushed you off the bridge on purpose. I was driving about 50 feet behind you. I'm sure there are other witnesses to the accident. We should definitely go to the police station and file a report." In front of the girl's eyes immediately surfaced the displeased face of the major, and she lived her life. The young man asked if you were cold. "It happens from shock. I, too, would probably go crazy if I was thrown from a height so abruptly. But we've got to get up there somehow. Grab my neck and hop on one leg. There's no other way in this situation. The path went up steeply, so it took about 10 minutes. Camille was completely exhausted. The swollen ankle and foot added to the discomfort. "I'll take you to the hospital first, so the medics can see what's wrong with your leg." The girl glanced in the driver's mirror and shrieked her whole face was covered in abrasions and scratches. William smiled encouragingly. "These wounds will quickly pass and there will be no marks left, but the leg is serious. What do you think about the accident?" "Nothing yet. I'm sure he was trying to get you killed. I could see the cyclist pick you up and drop you like a feather." That remark interested Camille. "Tell me, William, was he this man?" The girl tried to mimic the dimensions of the man she knew with her hands. "I can't be sure of my measurements, but it was something like this. I couldn't see his face because he never turned around. He knocked you over and drove off like nothing happened. You landed lucky. You saw the old concrete beams at the bottom of the ravine." "I'm sinning again. I think you forgot your bike." "Not at all. Your two-wheeled steed is safe and sound. I threw it in the trunk." The guy turned onto a road leading to the center of the township. "You know I've seen you before. You work at the Paris Salon. It's a funny name for the province, but it's positive." Camille felt bad about her town. "By the way, I'm the owner of the salon. It's not by chance that the name of the salon was given to this place. It's a kind of tribute to history. It is. I didn't know that. A long time ago, a German industrialist did business in our town. They call them businessmen nowadays. And this man decided to decorate the main street with 3 bricks and named them in honor of 3 European capitals, London, Paris, and Berlin. Now I'll tell everyone interesting stories. After all, I am omnivorous. I am fond of everything little by little, traveling, collecting stories, writing articles. The only thing I haven't encountered are incidents like today." Camille laughed, but there was despair in her laughter, not joy. "I said the wrong thing about you. It seems to me that you are in a new and unfamiliar bind today. That changes the whole matter. After all, I'm here to visit and relax. My grandmother lives here. I try to visit her whenever I can. But I'm willing to sacrifice a few days to devote myself to an exciting endeavor. You know, I feel like Sherlock Holmes." Camille grinned. "William, you've taken it too high. But I don't rule out the possibility that you might actually be able to help make sense of this obscure case. It's just that my grandmother and I have nowhere to turn for help. The police. They don't want to listen to me. They think I'm not at home." The car pulled up in front of the hospital and William helped Camille out. "Can't you do it yourself? Let me help you. It's a strange day. We've been together for almost half an hour. I don't know your name. I'm sorry, William, but flying off a bridge with your head down doesn't make you think of introductions." "That's a ridiculous remark indeed." "No offense." The girl extended the hand she'd earned in the fall. "Camille, it's a pleasure to bring a real princess to the trauma center." When Camille came home that evening on crutches and accompanied by a strange young man, Wendy nearly fainted. "Granddaughter, what's wrong?" "My heart sensed trouble. I told you to be careful." William tried to briefly summarize the matter to the elderly woman, but after his story, Wendy had to be tempered with valerian. When the women recovered a little, she said thoughtfully, "And I don't understand. Why? What do they want from us? Or do they hate us so much that they don't really need a reason?" He looked thoughtfully at Wendy. "You'll excuse me, please, but this is the kind of thing people would only do for very big money. So big that the mind refuses to produce adequate thoughts." Camille looked at him and smiled sadly. But we don't have that kind of money, even though we have our own small business. It seems to me that we are very short of oligarchs, so this version is canceled. William put his finger up. Very wrong. Maybe there's something you don't know. But there could be a secret in your family, or maybe in your parents. I'm not insisting, but let's think about it logically. Let's say your parents had a secret, but that's only theoretical. In reality, there's no such thing. My parents are good people. I'm not arguing or saying that a secret could be bad, but it could have been about money. If I got it right, it's all tied up in the family. No one on the outside has shown up yet. Wendy looked at William with interest. You're a young man, quite bright, but I think it's just plain hatred. William shifted his gaze from Camille to Wendy. Are you saying that you're, as you called her, Vanessa is so hated that she's willing to let you go to waste if anything goes wrong? And other people? Oh, you just don't know her. I'd love to talk to her. Wendy and Camille stared at William in surprise, and he was embarrassed. Pardon me for intruding. I came to visit my grandmother to unwind a little. The thing is, I'm going to open a detective agency. That's my dream, and everything seems to be in place. But I guess I'm not quite ready. I've helped people to the best of my ability before, and more often successfully than not. But such an interesting and complicated case, which I'm sure is directly connected with your roots, I've never seen, so I wanted to take the plunge. I'm sorry, I'll go again. Camille tried to stand up, but why are you sitting? You can't move around too much. Camille, if you don't mind, I've been visiting you, but I'll bring tangerines, as I should. He smiled. I'm very fond of Granny, but it's really boring here. Come, of course. And then Camille hesitated. Grandma, what about Paris? I can't go there all the time. William immediately said, well, I guess Wendy can take over. I'd love to be the driver. Wendy quirked her eyebrows. I certainly wouldn't believe you couldn't handle it. In fact, William and Camille had agreed to it on the way home from the hospital. Camille had to tell me that Grandma had taken to drinking, either out of fear or idleness, and get her to take care of business for a while. It'd be a nice little kick in the pants to help keep the old woman's mind off things. And as they talked, Camille almost forgot about it. She just didn't realize what William was all about, all the signs and doing all the time. Even thought he was having a tic. But as soon as he moved toward the door, she remembered, and she could hardly contain her laughter. Because William's gestures, the way he let down, the eyebrows were inimitable. Wendy looked at her granddaughter, who was about to cry. Grandma, it's all right there. But you have to be there at least a couple hours a day, don't you? Well, all right, just don't cry, and I'll try. If I can't make it, you and William and I will carry you to the car. Okay, thanks, Grandma. In the morning, Grandma's at the wash with her hair nicely curled. Peeked in. Where are they? Are you awake? Yeah. Did something happen? Of course it is. Do you think I should go to the salon like this? Give me your makeup. I hope you have some. Grandma, you're insulting me. Don't forget we have a whole store full of makeup. Camille nodded at the large cosmetics. Wendy walked through. She took it and left the room. Camille didn't know what to think. Leaning back in her chair, moved to the kitchen. It was so nice having her grandmother at her breakfast was fabulous. Camille heard William come in, and Grandma sent him into the kitchen to drink coffee. The young man entered a little dazed. In his hand, he carried comfortable modern crutches. He had never given a girl such practical gifts. Good morning, Camille. Oh, thank you, William. What happened to your face? Nothing. William leaned over to her. Your grandmother I hardly recognized. Why? I don't know. She seemed different to me. They hadn't even had coffee yet. Wendy showed up in the kitchen. Camille gasped. Grandma, I don't recognize you. Dominating cream, skillfully applied makeup, changed her face. Completely mom's coat. In front of them stood a typical businesswoman who didn't spare any money on herself at all. And I'm ready. Let's go. William got up, of course. Camille watched and did not understand how a man could lose a dozen years and all the traces of a big drink in the morning. An hour later, Emily called. Camille, how is your health? You're getting better, and your grandmother's been building us up. Camille, you asked what's wrong and hung up in surprise. Grandma had already ordered the gloves and the compound. She got a discount, reprimanded every hairdresser. But she didn't forget to praise them either. Anyway, she's been very active. Now she went to the store, so the girls decided to take a break and tell Camille everything. On the pretext of asking about her health. About an hour later, the doorbell rang. Camille got scared. Grandma is at work, and she has the keys. Who could it be? How could she? Cautiously approached the door and listened. I'm a mean and scary gray wolf. She smiled, opened the door. William stood on the threshold and held a cake. Here I didn't know if you liked cake or flowers better. Then I thought flowers were kind of early. So cake it is, especially since I like sweets too. The girl laughed, and I'm slowly getting used to your logical thinking. They settled down in the kitchen. They talked about nothing for a while, about the weather, about nature. Then Camille said, You know, William, I'd love to dig into our family. I can't understand why my parents suffered for what they did. So you're 100% sure they died for a reason? Of course not, and I'll never believe that. They sat for a while longer. William listened carefully to everything Camille had told him yesterday. She had told him in just 2 sentences, and today she had recounted in detail everything her grandmother had told her. He wrote something down, then asked permission to take some pictures. I'm just taking them and returning them so Wendy doesn't notice. Yeah, okay. I think if Alex didn't change his name when he ran away, I might be able to find out something. Anyway, wait for me tomorrow. He looked at Camille for a little longer than propriety allowed. He held his gaze, and Camille was suddenly embarrassed. I'm not saying goodbye. I'm bringing the most important figure yet. Camille laughed. I've already had a call from the hairdressers saying that Granny is making a mess of things there. Who knows, maybe you and I will be right, and Granny will have some other interest in life. He's staring at Camille again. I can't. It's Camille. Let's use the first name. The girl breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, they laughed. 2 weeks passed. William still drove Wendy to and from work. He hadn't told Camille anything new yet. The only thing he said was that he had friends in America, and he asked her to find out, so to speak, the inside secrets of their court. But Camille began to look for herself. She read on the internet that Alex left a huge fortune after himself, and his nephew Michael entered the rights of inheritance. This, of course, was already something, but that was the end of all the information on the internet. Apparently, the next one would be when Michael died. Or had he already died? Camille wondered. Strange indeed. In fact, if money was involved in all this, why did her father's relatives take him back to his homeland to bury him? It was now that she realized she should have resisted. But they were all in such a state. Why did they say this place was a dead place? Was it connected? Camille was so confused, she didn't realize she'd fallen asleep. She was awakened by her grandmother's voice. Camille. Camille, are you all right? Yes, Grandma, I'm here. What's wrong? Wendy burst into the room, followed by William. But thank God, Grandma. What happened? They tried to burn down your barbershop today. William turned to Wendy. Let's just say it like it is. The barbershop wasn't going to burn down. It was a warning. You realize nobody burns anything in broad daylight. This was planted. It was written on a piece of paper. Pay me back. That's something. Camille was angry. You can go to the police with that. And I agree. Attempted arson. A note. Camille got a more gentle welcome this time. Is this your relative, your husband? If not, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. The uniformed man looked at Camille with a frown. But it's obvious to a fool. It's going to be a cold case. No one's ever solved a case like this around here, and it doesn't look like they're their own. They are. They'll never do that. No, not the husband. Camille has a charming smile. It's a private detective from the capital. The policeman was a little confused. Okay, I'll refer you to an investigator. He'll be handling your case. Well, what was he supposed to do with a private detective? That's all he needed. On the other hand, if he gets something, that detective will have to share it with them. And if they don't, what do they care? If even the detective couldn't figure it out, the investigator was a young man who tried his best to seem important and serious. Camille was upset at first, but William whispered in her ear, You're a young man. A hot case won't be closed just like that. Camille was once again amazed at William's insight. The investigator's name was Liam. And he said, blushing, "Let's make a deal. When we're here, you call me by my first name and middle name. And when we're somewhere else, you just call me Liam." William and Camille nodded. Liam slid a blank sheet of paper over to him. "Now let's start from the beginning." Camille sighed. She had had to tell her family's story too many times in the last few days, especially since the story wasn't hers at all. It was more of an older generation. Liam asked interesting questions. Some Camille could not answer because she simply did not know. Grandmother, of course, would answer them. Liam looked at them. "I take it no case has ever been opened?" "No." "I see. Let's do it this way. I have to go to the barber shop now. Document everything. Interview witnesses to open a case. When it's open, you can't just close it. After that, I'll come to your place to talk to your grandmother. It seems to me the clue is too close. We can see it, but we don't understand it." "Too close." Camille breathed indignantly. "I mean, if we'd solved the riddle sooner, maybe my parents would still be alive. Maybe. But maybe not. We'll see." William helped her up to Camille's apartment. They heard a loud voice still on the landing. Camille's grandmother looked fearfully at William. Who was she with? They walked in, and Camille realized everything at once. On the sofa sat the very same Ambo, and in the armchair was Vanessa. "Camille, hello. I'm here to see you. And you have strangers here. Grandma's not a stranger." Wendy turned abruptly to her granddaughter. "Camille, calling the police. Don't you realize they came to see you, just didn't know I was here too?" William apologized. "Camille, I have to go to the bathroom for a minute." The girl looked at him in surprise. "You found the time. Maybe there would be such a scandal here that they'd all have to be rescued." As William closed the door behind him, Camille saw that he was dragging his cell phone out of his jacket. "That's it. Well, William, he's back in a couple minutes. So, Camille, you should probably ask the uninvited guests to leave your house, shouldn't you?" Ambal grinned, stood up, and loomed over William. But William, though much smaller, did not waver, did not look away. "Vanessa, why do you think so unflatteringly of us, young man, without knowing our affairs? Your Camille owes me a large sum of money. I realize she may not have that kind of money, but we've offered to give her the business. I'm even willing to pay a little extra. And that's just out of the kindness of my heart. It's not worth anything. As far as I know, Camille didn't borrow anything from you, but Camille or her parents. What difference does it make now? It's not fair that I should lose my money. I lent it to you. Wendy couldn't take it anymore. Aren't you ashamed of yourself? But I know that Vanessa and Sam had no debts. How would you know? You've long since lost your mind and forgotten everything. That's because you drink too much. I'm surprised you're in condition today, but it's not evening yet, isn't it?" William sat down on the chair next to Camille and turned to Vanessa. "Tell me, Vanessa, who is this young man? What difference does it make?" "He's my daughter Anechka's fiancé. She lives in America. He came to visit without a nanny." The woman looked at the Ambo, then at William. "Anechka has very important business there. She couldn't come. Can you tell me why your future son-in-law wanted to send Camille to the other world?" "What kind of nonsense are you talking about?" "Why are you talking nonsense? You see this? I was following him when he threw Camille off the bridge, and I have an excellent recorder in my car." Vanessa looked confusedly at the Ambo. He motioned to William. "Where's the tape?" "Well, you know the answer is in a safe place." The man turned to Vanessa. "No, that wasn't the deal." She looked at him angrily. "Oh my God. But God has given us assholes as relatives, so sit down and keep quiet." Amble sniffed resentfully and sat back in his seat. "Young man, and I'm sure you're wrong. Tell me, what is the reason for your visit today? If I understand correctly, the circumstances are not in your favor, because Michael, Wendy's brother, never acknowledged your daughter." Vanessa choked. "Ah, you've done some digging. But I hope you realize that there's so much money at stake, you've got nothing left to live for." Then Wendy asked, "So you're dead?" "Yes, Wendy. 3 months ago. The thing is, Vanessa was never able to prove that her daughter was Michael's daughter. They did some tests. Vanessa spent a lot of money trying to fake a positive test, but Michael had a lot more, so no one wanted to get involved. All the tests, of course, were negative. Vanessa jumped up. No, she didn't. It was all a setup. We can still prove it. And what can't you prove? And you've known for a long time. Michael inherited a huge fortune. Alex wasn't just rich. His business had been booming all along. When it became clear that he wouldn't admit it, Vanessa made the decision to eliminate possible heirs. Camille listened and didn't really understand what heirs were even being talked about. William, meanwhile, continued. He turned to Wendy. You were a bit of a liar when you said you'd never spoken to your brother at all. Wendy sighed. Once, just for a few hours, he brought money for Vanessa, but I kicked him out. Well, he also called us over there. Never saw him again. That's right. He didn't chase her away, but he didn't acknowledge her either. And when Vanessa found out he'd gone to Russia, she realized she had to act fast. The thing is, your brother came to say goodbye. He was diagnosed with cancer, but he still had a pretty decent amount of time to live. First time things didn't go according to plan. Yes, Noah, you honestly thought Sam went to the bathhouse with his wife. That shows your poor preparation because Vanessa hated bathhouses. Were you identified? You appeared on the shore as locals who were just coming from fishing. Belle smiled. Talk anyway, as you realize, nobody's getting out of here. And the man put the barrel down beside him. Wendy covered Camille, grabbed her tightly. The girl was crying. How could you? Why? Vanessa's in the cheese. For the money, sweetheart. It should belong to us. The second time, you decided to act for sure and damaged the brake hose on the car. That would have been it. But then Camille came of age. She was no less of a threat. Vanessa grinned. Wow, where did you come from? A young man too smart for this rotten land. She turned to Wendy and Camille. What are you looking at? I had a dream all my life, and I loved Michael, and he loved me too. And if that old crust hadn't interfered, I would have gone away with him. This is all your fault. Michael's money should belong to me and Anna. Well, you realize that's impossible. All of it. Why? Vanessa stared at him with sightless eyes. Because Camille is Michael's direct granddaughter, which he recognized before he died. There may well be a will. Yes, Vanessa. That's why your daughter now has to woo Notary Michael, and he's 20 years older than her. Where did you come from? Vanessa grabbed the gun that was lying next to Noah and pointed it at Camille. If you die, we get everything. You don't need it anyway. We really do. Wendy stood up and covered her granddaughter with herself. And that old idea, when Vanessa tried to push Wendy away, but somehow turned uncomfortably, there was a deafening sound. William slowly sat down on the floor. At that moment, the door flew off its hinges and the police burst into the room. William. Camille fell to her knees beside him. William opened his eyes. I'm sorry. It was my first case. 2 months had passed. Wendy looked at his granddaughter. You thought well. Camille smacked her window slit. Grandma, of course. Think about it. Where are we going to put all this money? I only give half of it away. But for our orphanages, it's a great help. Wendy sighed. You're a good girl. You're going to her now. Yeah, Grandma, you know, it's been a long time coming. I'm going to pick her up. A woman is coming by tonight to look after her. She's not aggressive. And in fact, you'd think she's perfectly adequate, just stuck in the time Michael left her. Wendy sighed again, and Camille looked at her suspiciously. Granny, what aren't you jealous of? Well, it's your blood after all. Camille hugged her grandmother. That's what you think. I may be bad, but I feel nothing but pity for my grandmother. I just know it's wrong. She didn't do anything wrong, and she should spend the rest of her life with her family. I love you very, very much. Wendy waved her hand. Go suck it up. Grandma has court tomorrow. Yeah, I know. I hope they give them the full measure of punishment. The trial was delayed because everyone was waiting for Vanessa's daughter to arrive from America. The girl had gone on the run, and it took a while to apprehend her. But now the whole family is together. Tomorrow their fate will be decided. From the capital. Even the judge who was to hear the case had arrived. And Camille had only one thing on her mind. that the trial wouldn't take too long because William was being discharged this afternoon. For a week, Camille sat in the hospital corridor looking like a shadow. 4 ICU surgeries, deterioration, improvement, clinical death. After a week, a tired doctor sat down next to her. "Well, rejoice. Your fiancé's awake. I thought we'd never get him out." Camille cried and found nothing better to say than he is not my fiancé. The doctor grinned, "So he will be soon." "You're Camille. He was deliriously calling for you all the time." And a week later, she was invited to the notary's office to read Grandpa Michael's will. He left everything, absolutely everything, to his only blood granddaughter. They gave her probation with mandatory hours. Noel got 10, and Vanessa got 12 years. She was screaming, banging on the cage. "No, I don't want to go to prison. It's not right. Michael was my man. Should have left everything to me." Noel was dejectedly silent. It's an easy mark now. It turned out to be not so happy. Did Camille run all the way to the hospital? No, but why didn't she drive like a fool, honestly? She flew into the hospital lobby. "Tell me, has William been discharged yet?" The nurse girl looked at her strangely and smiled silently, then nodded at the door. Camille slowly made her way towards the door. It was strange. She had been here as her own for a long time. All the nurse girls are on a first-name basis with her. What was going on today? She pushed the door open and backed away because a whole bunch of balloons flew at her. Oops. Camille looked at the balloons that filled the entire space under the ceiling and smiled. She had loved balloons going up in the air since she was a little girl. Loved it. She shuddered. William was standing next to her. But you know that before, don't you? And William suddenly got down on his knee, handed her a box with a ring in it. "I promise. Often release a whole bunch of marbles. Just marry me." Camille almost cried. I think she had been sobbing for several nights because she realized William would get out of the hospital and go to his home in the capital. Yes, yes, yes. She took his neck with her hands and saw that there were a lot of people around. Her grandmother, the girls from Curson, and William's parents, who came as soon as he was in the hospital. Standing next to her grandmother was Benjamin's second grandmother, who Camille had picked up from the hospital. Camille now felt that she was the luckiest person alive. She has so many people who came to be happy for her. It's a shame. Too bad Mom and Dad aren't around. But Camille was sure they could see everything. One thing made it a little darker. She would probably have to leave with her husband. It was unlikely that the Metropolitans would agree to live in this town, and Grandma certainly wouldn't. And it was just heartbreaking. "Do you think we should try to open a detective agency in this town?" Camille pulled away from him, looked into his eyes, smiled. "I told you how much I love you. Off the top of my head. I guess I haven't gotten around to it yet." Camille laughed, but then William said, "You're the best person in the world. And I love you very much." William held her close to him. "I only believe this one. Remember that I will always love you even more. Always."